Richard Tice has a type. No, not romantic type, a political type, a target, someone he can point at and say, look at the nerve of them. He's very good at this.
Morally, her position was always completely indefensible. What she's done is blame everybody else but herself. She's blamed the legal advice, she's drawn in the complications of a court order. It's right that she pays the correct amount of tax. I would expect that a penalty may well be imposed, but if she had any integrity, any moral decency, given her position as Deputy Prime Minister, she would offer her resignation to the Prime Minister.
Angela Rayner was Reform's favourite prop for a while. Anytime a camera appeared, they were ready with her name. Last September, when it emerged that she underpaid stamp duty by around about £40,000 on a property purchase, Tice went to town. She was, and in his words, morally bankrupt, completely indefensible. She'd resign, he said, if she had any moral decency. Rayner referred herself to the Prime Minister's independent ethics advisor, and the advisor found that she hadn't met the standards expected of ministers, and so she resigned. Now, in April of 2026, the Sunday Times reports that Tice's property company, Quidnet Ret Limited, paid around $600,000 in dividends to him and an offshore trust registered in Jersey between 2020 and 2022, and during that period failed to pay the legally required 20% withholding tax on those dividends. The Sunday Times put the shortfall at around £91,000. Tax Policy Associates, the independent tax experts, calculated it closer to £120,000. Dan Needle at Tax Policy Associates, the company broke the law. That's before the separate Sunday Times story from the month prior, which found Tice had avoided nearly $600,000 in corporation tax through what experts described as highly aggressive tax planning. So, the man who demanded Angela Rayner's resignation over £40,000 owns a company that independent experts say failed to pay somewhere between £91,000 and £120,000 in legally required tax, channeled dividends through an offshore Jersey trust, and was already under scrutiny for a six-figure corporation avoidance scheme. Reform's official response, a minor administrative error.
Richard Tice made a minor administrative error when the Times had revealed he failed to pay £91,000 in tax. This morning, the Times is reporting that he also failed to pay almost £100,000 in corporation tax. Now, when Angela Rayner failed to pay £40,000 in tax, Richard Tice suggests that she was a hypocrite and she should resign. So if he's following his own suggestion, shouldn't Richard Tice resign?
Well, Richard is a very successful businessman. He's had a 40-year business career. He's created thousands of jobs. He's paid millions of pounds in tax. I would contrast that with everyone who sits around the cabinet table, none of whom seem to have even worked in the private sector.
That's not the question.
Well, let me answer the question.
OK, answer the question. Yeah.
Richard has taken advice. He believes he has paid the tax that he should have paid. In fact, he thinks he may have overpaid tax.
Robert Jenrick on TV this morning suggested Tice might have actually overpaid because he paid it through his personal return rather than through the company. When pushed, Jenrick landed on that the HMRC aren't investigating, so there's no story.
In order to clear it all up, perhaps you should do what the Lib Dems are suggesting, is that there should be an investigation. HMRC should look at it again.
Well, that's for HMRC, and as I understand it, they're not investigating.
But you said that he would be happy to look at it again.
As far as I know, HMRC are not investigating, so there is no story.
Angela Rayner underpaid £40,000. Did Tice wait for an HMRC investigation before calling her completely indefensible? Did he wait for all of the facts? No, he did not. So last night, Tice released a statement, and it said something. He describes the Sunday Times reporting as a smear campaign. He says that the article features assumptions, numbers and dates that are simply incorrect, without specifying which ones. He calls the tax experts who identified the problem Labour tax experts, and for the record, Tax Policy Associates is an independent organisation and Dan Needle is not a Labour Party activist. Then there was this line, I have always paid everything I was advised to pay. Read that carefully. He's not saying my company paid what was legally owed. He's not saying that the law was followed. He paid what he was advised to pay. Tax Policy Associates says the law doesn't permit advisors to simply defer the company's legal obligation to the shareholder's personal return. Being advised to do something and that thing being legal are not the same thing. But the real centerpiece of the statement is the part where he argues that tax efficiency is a basic corporate responsibility. Tax efficiency, a basic corporate responsibility from the man who said Angela Rayner's tax arrangements were morally bankrupt and completely indefensible. At Reform's own conference, asked about whether Farage's stamp duty arrangements, Tice didn't answer. He went straight for Rayner. Angela is Angela. Here we go again. Absolute twaddle. She was always calling for people to resign, and it turned out that she was just another hypocrite.
Do you think it was right for your boss, your leader, Nigel Farage, to avoid an extra £40,000 on stamp duty for his Clacton home?
Look, I'm not Nigel's tax advisor. I've no idea what you're talking about. What I do know is that
this is Reform
Angela Rayner
UK sleaze,
Angela Rayner
isn't it?
Angela
Here
Rayner,
we go again.
Absolute twaddle. Angela Rayner promised one thing. She promised to eradicate sleaze and have a sort of a government of integrity. She was always calling for people to resign, and it turned out she was just another hypocrite.
And at the press conference earlier this year, he asked journalists, how many friends of yours would you voluntarily choose to pay more tax than they were legally obliged to do so?
Required. But we've entered a new world where there is a moral imperative now in the United Kingdom that you shouldn't just pay tax as required. No, no, no. No, you are a naughty person, boy or girl, unless you pay the maximum tax you could possibly pay. Oh, yes.
His company, according to the independent tax experts, failed to pay tax it was legally obliged to pay. The statement ends with this: after several weeks of this treatment, I won't be indulging the Sunday Times any further. He won't be indulging them. Angela Rayner referred herself to an independent ethics advisor and resigned. Richard Tice is done answering questions. There's also a postscript, like literally a PS, at the bottom of his official statement, as if he had thought something just on his way out. It's worth noting that we have the longest tax code in the world at circa 24,000 pages. The man who called Angela Rayner's position completely indefensible is ending his statement with a footnote about how confusing tax law really is.
It's right that she pays the correct amount of tax. I would expect that a penalty may well be imposed, but if she had any integrity, any moral decency, given her position as Deputy Prime Minister, she would offer her resignation to the Prime Minister.
Richard has taken advice. He believes he has paid the tax that he should have paid. In fact, he thinks he may have overpaid tax because he paid it through his personal taxation rather than through the company. If it transpires that he's underpaid tax, of course he'll settle it.